Hello everyone, welcome to a special episode on Magicka Addict. I have with me Tjhm4, a verified mod author at Nexus Mods with 1.4 million unique downloads. Tjhm4 specializes in mods that change gameplay systems or add new systems to Skyrim. His tjhrim suite of mods offers perk overhauls, race overhauls, enemy scaling tweaks, a system for religion, leveling overhaul, and more. In this video, we chat with Tjhm4 and get his perspective on some of these mods. So let's get into it then. Hey TJH, I'm a big fan of your suite of mods, man. The load order in the ongoing Vigilant series on my channel uses your mods and I love the experience. Thank you for taking the time to do this, and I want to know what makes Skyrim so engaging for you and what got you into modding.
Hey Magicka Addict, thanks for the kind words, and I'm glad you've had fun with my mods. This sort of feedback is really rewarding as a mod of there, so it makes me happy that I shared my mods in the first place, and yeah, thanks again. So I guess the thing I enjoy most about Skyrim is probably just building characters. So I use the game almost as a sandbox for testing out different builds and seeing if I can pull them off. So all my characters tend to be pretty different and to really lean into particular skills. So for instance, I might play a character who only uses illusion spells and reverse pickpockets poisons. Just getting this build working is quite a challenge, especially in the early game where your illusion spells are pretty useless and pickpocketing is difficult, so you spend a lot of time, running away basically when things go wrong. But for me, that kind of developing the character is where the fun in the game really is. Once a character gets strong, usually around level 25 to 30, I begin to lose interest. But I guess that said, if I have a particular build in mind, I'll pick some thematic quest lines, often mod added, and then play through those too. And that can often take a character, into the late game to about level 40. So I guess I first got into modding by tinkering with other mods. I think first I was using Xedit to modify the Night Eye image space modifier to work better with my lighting setup. And at the time I was also using advanced adversary encounters. I spent some time exploring in Xedit to try to understand why its mages were constantly one-shotting me. And I got it right. It turns out that they were given a spell called Dark Flare that caused unresistible damage. And this is why nothing my character did could help them survive. And so I set about adjusting that to give my character more of a fighting chance. But around that time I was also getting frustrated with how all my characters could basically approach every dungeon the same way. So if it was a sword using character, then there was never any situation or reason to switch to another weapon, right? The sword just worked for everything in Skyrim. And it was when I was digging around in advanced adversary encounters that I saw that it also gives enemies resistances. And not just to magic elements like fire, frost, and shock, but also to weapon types. Seeing that made me realize that this offered a way to encourage the player to switch things up. And so this is how the idea behind Know Your Enemy, which is my first mod, was born.
I would love to discuss the Master of One, a double-edged perk overhaul. This is a super perk overhaul mod that allows for the creation of highly specialized characters. The addition of drawbacks to each perk, a mechanic I particularly admire, transforms every perk selection into a deliberate and crucial choice. Could you share your thought process behind the design of this mod?
Sure, so like I said before, I approach Skyrim not as a grand quest to save the world, but more as a sandbox for testing out different and unique builds. Nonetheless, vanilla packs basically allow you to become good at a wide range of things. So, this is part of the Elder Scrolls design philosophy. Back in Oblivion, you could literally max out every skill. But I wanted the opposite. Rather than one godlike character who takes maybe 500 hours to develop, I'd much rather have 20 unique and diverse characters, each of whom takes maybe 25 hours to develop. So, like many people, I guess I've tried loads of different pack mods, Ordinator, Adamant, Spag, and so on, but none of them was quite what I was after. The perk mod that I probably enjoyed the most might have been Skype, the Skyrim perk extravaganza from way back on Legendary Edition. It adds lots of perks, loads, each of which has a small effect, but it allowed you to craft a unique build, like maybe your character bonds with Khajiit, or is a skilled jeweler, Or maybe they're great at hunting wild animals with a bow. And, so I guess mulling this over, I came to realize that unlike most players, I actually like passive perks and perk sinks. I made a post about this on the Skyrim mod subreddit 7 years ago, which was actually 3 years before Master of One was released, so it was obviously something that was on my mind for quite a while. So from that point on, I guess I started sketching out how I would do a pack mod. So Skype forces you to specialize just through the sheer number of packs, right? There's just so many packs, you can only take a small slice of them, so you end up being quite specialized. But I took it further by including debuffs within the packs themselves and then creating antagonisms between some skills. So, getting better at fire spells now makes you worse with the other elements. So I probably spent about a year sketching out the trees and getting feedback on the design. An early version was shared on the subreddit too, and I got a lot of good input. And then it took about 2 more years to actually make the mod, with most of the creation happening in a final 6-month push.
Oh wow, so Master of One underwent over 3 years of development. That's impressive dedication. I believe even Ordinator took many years to develop. Perk overhauls are very complex because most perks add gameplay features and you need to code every gameplay tweak made by each perk, which takes a lot of time. Thank you for sharing that insight into the development of Master of One.
No worries, and yeah, I'm sure most pack overhauls take multiple years. They're just so much work. Because each perk ranked involves making a separate perk record under the hood. It's, there's many more perks even than you would think by looking at the trees. So Master of One has more than 1,000 perks. And some of these take just a few minutes to make, but others, the more complex ones, could take a day or two. And then trying to fit all that development time around work and the rest of your life is tricky, so total development time is really long. But yeah, I'm sure that's true of other perk modes too.
Also, I want to add, you and I play Skyrim similarly, creating highly specialized characters, defining their goals, and crafting unique short stories for each playthrough is incredibly satisfying. Planning a build by engaging your creative faculties is unmatched. No other game offers you an experience like modded Skyrim. Thanks to dedicated modders like you, Skyrim will always have a permanent place on my PC.
Great, yeah, I suppose this is the style of play that my mods appeal to, kind of the planner. Someone who wants just, one big playthrough where they try and do everything with a single character, or a more power fantasy style gameplay with lots of freedom. They're just not going to like my style at all, but it's good that my mods have their niche.
Okay, back to Master of One perks, it must have been quite a challenge to assign a drawback to every single perk. But considering the limited pool of potential debuffs a player can endure, what strategies did you employ to overcome this limitation?
Yeah, figuring out the debuffs was pretty hard. So, some were easy, so the spell or weapon types could trade off against each other, so, you get good with maces, but that means you get worse with axes, that sort of thing. But others, especially in the thief trees, were much harder to think of reasonable debuffs. In those cases, I just tried to come up with something that vaguely made sense, to me at least, but would also be engaging from a gameplay perspective. So, as an example, let's take the silent casting perk in the sneak tree, which makes your spells silent and they deal more damage to unaware enemies. But the debuff is that they cost more to cast. Well, why are silent spells more costly? I guess you can argue it's because maybe you're expending extra magicka to suppress the sound of the spells. But in terms of gameplay, it's fun because now you can't just spam spells like mad because you'll run out of magicka quickly. So you better make sure your spells really land or you'll need some sort of backup. In all cases though, I just want it to be possible to overcome the penalties from the packs, whether through gear, enchantments, potions, or just more packs. So for silent casting, there were plenty of packs to reduce the cost of spells. They'll just come with their own downsides. So in the end, I guess it's a delicate balance of perks trading off against one another.
Very cool. In my experience, creating specialized characters like a pure warrior or a mage was straightforward using Master of One, and selecting the right perks was easy. However, the difficulty arises when building hybrid characters, for instance, an illusion mage who also relies on daggers, or a crossbow-wielding thief who utilizes runes. What advice can you offer players planning such builds?
Yeah, I get this question quite a lot on the mod page. And some players think Master of One is definitely too hard on hybrid builds. But I love hybrid builds with Master of One, so it definitely took me a little bit by surprise. I guess my advice would be to just build up your character gradually, so pick pipes carefully and stop at earlier ranks than if you were gonna go after a pure build. So for instance, if I'm mixing heavy armor and spellcasting, then I might initially only wear a cuirass. No helmet, boots, or gauntlets, and this is to keep the stamina costs of heavy armor under control while I focus on building spellcasting ability. Then I might take a few heavy armor packs, but none that overly get in the way of spellcasting. On the spellcasting side, you can probably only afford to invest in 1 or 2 schools of magic, so pick those carefully. For instance, heavy armor lets you get into melee combat, so maybe bound weapons from conjuration or cloak or touch spells from destruction would be useful. Summons or ranged destruction spells are probably just a waste of time, as they better suit frail mages, not tanky battle mages. Or whatever, right? Do what feels fun to you. Master of One's Perk debuffs have only ever provided a minor obstacle to my characters, something that can definitely be worked around pretty easily. And I think most users will find the same, right? If there's a build that you really want to go for, even if it's kind of a hybrid that really pushes against Master of One systems, you can get there in the end. Just keep at it.
Great tips. Thank you. Let's discuss Legacy, a race overhaul, and Curse of the Firmament. What were the limitations of vanilla races and standing stones, and what do these 2 mods offer?
So these both have the same design philosophy as Master of One, basically, combining buffs with debuffs to create trade-offs. They were actually just spin-offs from Master of One while it was in its design phase. You know, a perk overhaul just seemed so overwhelming that I wasn't sure I'd actually ever be able to build it. And race and standing stone overhauls are much less work, and they gave me an opportunity to test out some ideas and get used to some more game systems, which I'd go on to use when making Master of One. The effect and legacy are pretty mild, and they reflect a sort of a basic racial role-playing. In particular, because they all apply to NPCs, it encourages the player to approach NPC fights differently depending on the race of the NPC they're fighting. So you can also pick your effects independent of your actual race, which is a feature that I think is pretty great, as it avoids forcing any particular playstyle on a given race, and it avoids some of the slightly weird racial determinism common to high fantasy settings. For Curse of the Firmament, I guess I never really liked how dull and basic the vanilla standing stone effects are. They kind of have to be dull, because they get stacked on top of the vanilla perks, vanilla racial effects, and so on, all of which just endlessly make the player stronger. So each element in that system has to be kind of boring. But I wanted something more unusual, and because standing stones are totally optional, I could really have some kind of odd or extreme effects.
In your religion mod, Acolyte Divine Covenants, the core mechanic involves the player beginning with a significant penalty. However, as the player's devotion grows, these initial penalties transform into extremely powerful benefits. Could you elaborate on the concept behind a deity imposing a punishment on a worshipper right at the outset of their devotion?
Sure, I mean, lots of real-world religions ask things of their believers, right? So it might be fasting, abstention, chastity, food taboos. So the idea of divines applying costs as some sort of test of faith doesn't seem too outlandish to me. And on top of that, I think it works from a gameplay point of view. As with my other mods, I wanted some sort of trade-off, but I didn't just want to repeat what was already done with Master of One, Legacy, or Curse of the Firmament. As such, Acolyte keeps the trade-offs, but separates the buffs and the debuffs by time. The debuff comes first, and as you work through it, you get progressively better buffs. This doesn't mean that by the end, when you're a Divine Champion, the effects are overwhelmingly strong, pure buffs, and probably overpowered. But this is by design. It takes a very long time to become a champion, and so the player is probably overpowered by that point anyway. I also made an effort to make the buffs feel otherworldly, so there are spells that have no equivalent in the regular schools of magic. Spells that cost gold to cast, or, multiple powers that share the same cooldown. There are summons that heal allies instead of fighting for you. My favorite are probably the concentration cloak spells, which resemble vanilla cloak spells in their effects, but they have to be continually maintained like a concentration spell. Took a little bit of work under the hood to get those going, but I think the effect is really neat.
Know Your Enemy 2, another amazing mod that gives enemies a wide variety of resistances and weaknesses. It makes combat dynamic and tactical. Do share some insight on the design of this mod, but I also want to discuss an example. Let's assume our character is facing a dwarven machine like a dwarven spider or a spear. He has to remember that these machines are super resistant to blades, bows, crossbows, fists, bashes, shock, fire, poison and disease. But they are weak against blunt and frost. So let us assume we are role-playing as a stealth archer thief and his skills in blunt and frost magic are bad. What would you do in that case?
Right, so that's a good question. So, I guess Know Your Enemy 2 is designed so that most pairs of skills can handle most enemies. This means that you're never forced down a particular route, for instance, needing to, say, use fire for vampires or something like that. That said, though, Dwarven Automata are tough, and the bows plus poison combo typical of the stealth archer is actually quite poor. So you are in a bit of a bind in this case. Nonetheless, you do have a few options. One is just to grind it out, right? Automata are resistant to poisons and bows, but they're not immune to them, so you can win just with these techniques. Another would be to use enchantments, and this is probably the best option. So if you get a bow, for instance, with a frost enchantment, you'll do great. And another option is just to sneak past them, right? You don't have to fight every creature. And I think it makes sense that a stealth archer would need to sneak through some kinds of dungeons, right? They can't just go in and annihilate every kind of enemy they encounter. And finally, you can also make use of a follower who has complementary skills, right? So if there's an enemy that you're struggling against, you'll find someone to team up with who can handle them much more easily. So, I mean, I guess this whole approach, though, is probably not too satisfying for a player used to this vanilla philosophy of just go anywhere and do anything. But I guess that's the whole point of my mods, right? For each character, some things will be easier, some things will be harder, and then there might be some things that need a totally kind of different strategy to get around. And this is all deliberate, right? The idea is to create variety between builds that keeps the player interested, but that also feels reasonable and grounded in the world of Skyrim.
Awesome. NPC stat rescaler and enemy releveler. Why do you think these mods are important?
So I think it's widely known that enemies in Skyrim suffer from health bloat, right? So at high levels, they just become damage sponges. And I think also mods that up damage also make clear that enemy mages basically have infinite magicka, and this means you can't play defensively and wear them down. So the NPC stat rescaler was my attempt to fix this, while working entirely within the stat calculation system that the vanilla game uses. So I just tweak a few of the settings. You know, some of these are settings applied to individual races and others are global settings. But then those values just get fed into the regular vanilla stat calculation system to produce a different result. So the default outcome of the rescaler I really like. So earlier on the game is much harder because vanilla makes enemies start with less health than the player, while the rescaler levels the playing field, right? So those level 1 bandits now have like twice as much health as they did in vanilla. And as the game progresses, the player does catch up, right? They get stronger, but the enemies never get spongy. And in particular, mages do have finite magic, just like the player. So I had a lot of fun making it because it was all about, learning how the vanilla systems work and then working with them rather than trying to force my design on top of the game. Though I should definitely add that, it's a patcher and it's totally dependent on Meta, who created Z-Edit and its patching framework. Without that, I would never have been able to make this mod in the first place. So, the Releveler solves a problem with mods that de-level the world. So I like a de-level world, but if you've tried those, you might have seen this. So if you just make encounter zones static, so each dungeon has its own fixed level, then the enemies within those dungeons can get really inconsistent in terms of their level, because they're drawn from a long list of enemies that spans a wide range of levels, because the dungeon was originally supposed to change its level, right? And so it could produce all these different kinds. And the solution, which is what the Releveler does, is to edit the levels of the enemies themselves. And this kind of makes different types of enemies, so bandits or Draugr or dwarven machines, it makes them more internally consistent. And it achieves, I think, what most people have in mind when they think about a D-level world. So it would again have been a compatibility nightmare, right? Which is why it's a patcher as opposed to a regular plugin. So again, thanks to Meta for his work on Z-Edit.
wonderful work on these essential mods that tackle scaling. Tribute gold-based leveling. I must say, this mod is genius. Leveling using gold is an incredible idea. For example, my new character spent 5+ hours doing all sorts of stuff using multiple skills, but no skills increased as you use them. So you don't spend all that time worrying about leveling. You are in total control of when to level. You can play for 30 hours and not level up. Add this mod and your other mod trainers Galore and we are in leveling heaven.
Thanks for the kind words, yeah. So, I guess I'd always found Skyrim's sort of practice-based leveling system frustrating because it tends to homogenize builds. And that's basically the opposite of what I want, right? I want each build to be as different as possible. And for that reason, I guess I've always sought out systems that let players pick their level ups. And I think in that case, gold is the natural currency, right? Because every character gets gold. Even if you're just role-playing as a farmer, you'll get gold, though you may never have actually swung a sword. So there are lots of other gold-based leveling mods, things like gold is XP or gold is souls, and back in the days of Oblivion there was ride leveling, but none of those were quite what I was after for Skyrim though. So Trainers Galore was my first attempt at this, and it was, I guess, sort of a proof of concept. I was interested to see if you could create a system that made every NPC a trainer based on their existing game data, similar to, I guess, how the NPC stat rescaler worked. I wanted to work with the game engine rather than against it. So at first I tried to use NPC skills to decide what training they would offer. And it turns out a lot of NPCs have insane skills. For instance, lots of NPCs, especially non-combat NPCs, have all 3 crafting skills set to 100. So a skill-based approach couldn't work, right? Because it would mean almost everyone was a master trainer in alchemy, enchanting, and smithing. So instead, I switched to using NPC classes as opposed to their skills. And that works a lot better, though there are some NPCs in weird classes, so it still needed a little bit of tweaking. And it also exposed a bunch of errors in vanilla voice lines that I had to work around. But the end result was really fun, and I guess sort of immersive, but also very janky. Definitely, I feel it would be more at home in Oblivion than Skyrim. So I guess Tribute was me returning to the same idea many years later, but this time seeking out polish and a more streamlined experience rather than just seeing what the game engine was capable of. It relies on the mod's experience and static skill leveling for the underlying functionality, but then just wraps it into a power. And fiddling with the precise audio and visual effects that the power triggered took a little while, but I'm happy with the final outcome.
Do you have any other mods from your suite that you enjoy and recommend while playing?
Sure, I guess it would probably be challenging spelldying. It was one of the first mods I made, I think just after Trainers Galore. But I like it because I think it does one thing, it does it well in my opinion, and it has a significant positive impact on gameplay, right? I knew what I wanted it to do, spent a while thinking about how to achieve it, and I think in the end I'm pretty pleased with the result. And I guess what it does is specifically that it prevents non-magical characters from learning most spells, meaning that warriors can't fall back on a bit of magic in a pinch, but it does that in a pretty kind of intuitive and immersive way that makes sense within the game world. And I think this kind of gatekeeping warriors from spells is critical to differentiating magical and non-magical builds. Obviously you can still be a hybrid warrior mage, but this basically means an actual pure warrior can't just have a little backup arsenal of spells. And just when mods made by other people, I guess I'll never get tired of cob encumbrance. So it's a minor change. It basically has your carry weight, your current level of encumbrance affect your movement speed, and this just immediately makes carry weight much more meaningful to the game. And I'd also give a shout out to Undiscovered Means Unknown, which changes how your map and compass works, and it massively enhances exploration and makes you actually look at the world as...
Thank you for some great suggestions. I love cob encumbrance too. It gets back the Morrowind feel and punishes you for hoarding. What next for Tjhm4? Will you consider quest and faction mods, or will you stick to tweaking gameplay systems?
So I guess I'm definitely a gameplay modder, so I can't imagine ever building a proper quest. I mean, right now I don't even have the skills if I wanted to, and the learning curve looks pretty steep. I did put a sort of a mini hidden quest inside Sightseer, which is a mod that provides in-game guidebooks to the standing stones. And I guess I'd like to make other such mods with, guides to the Daedric shrines, or maybe Tjhm4 ruins and so on. And I'd probably include other mini quests in those too. Away from quests, adding Daedra worship to Acolyte is also on my list, but that's going to be a lot of work and quite a way off. And I want to come up with what I think is a good enough design idea before I really commit to it. Something that is different to the Divines. Clearly, the Daedra aren't just evil Divines. They have there's some sort of own take on how worship works, and so I want to really differentiate them.
What are your thoughts on paid mods and verified creations, and will you offer some?
So I'm pretty easygoing about this sort of stuff. I've never paid for a mod myself, and I probably never will. And I'd also never paywall any of my mods. That said, I don't object to others doing so, and I don't think it's unreasonable for modders to be financially compensated for what they do. I mean, certainly I think the Nexus donation point system seems to be a pretty good idea, and I've earned a fair bit from it myself. I guess overall I try to stay pretty zen about mods. So, I don't know, if something happened that made all mods disappear overnight, I'd try to focus more on the past enjoyment that I got from them, rather than being upset about them going.
That's a great attitude to have. Finally, are you looking forward to playing and modding Elder Scrolls 6?
To be honest, I don't know. I'd definitely much rather wait another 10 years and have the Elder Scrolls 6 be great than have it come out next year and be a disappointment. And so I'm not too worried about how long the game has been in development. I guess I do worry a little bit that the Bethesda style of games has just kind of reached its natural endpoint, right? I mean, genres don't last forever, and I'm slightly worried that this one is reaching the end of its life. That said, though, I'm absolutely keeping an eye out for announcements. And if and when number 6 arrives, I'll probably spend a lot of time playing it before I even think about turning to modding again.
Thank you Tjhm4 for taking the time to do this. Your mods add so much to Skyrim. Thank you for giving so much to the Skyrim and Elder Scrolls community. I wish you the best and look forward to your updates and new ideas. Alright guys, that was the discussion with Tjhm4. If you have any questions for him, please write in the comments below and I will get them answered for you. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Divines guard and keep you.